the final segment of Jones and Company today, and we are speaking with the Member of Parliament for Montague, Mr. Richard Lightbourne. And we have spoken about crime, a little bit about the economy. The government of the Bahamas will tell you, Mr. Lightbourne, that they are putting in place certain initiatives to stimulate the economy, and they will tell you that they are really working hard in overtime to bring about some improvement in the economy of the Bahamas. BAMSI is one of these things that they point to. Is BAMSI a good idea?
From my viewpoint, BAMSI is a good idea in the sense that it enables the country to start a serious program providing food for the nation. What the government is holding out as the ultimate effect of BAMSI is a major exaggeration, and it is, as so many things in this country, it is shrouded in secrecy as to what is going on. So when you have 5 contracts for building of the college in North Andros, costing in the neighborhood of $20–25 million, and you find that not one of those contracts went out to tender, not one. You have reports of people with political connections and no involvement whatever in the construction business being allowed to have several of these contracts. When you see the negligence that has occurred in the awarding of these contracts, in that the government did not ensure that the proper steps were in place before allowing the construction even to commence. We've been provided with only one of the contracts to do with the construction of the male dormitory, which was the one that burnt down over a year ago. And that discloses that there was no insurance in place on the building. Now that is a matter of such significance that really somebody should have been compelled to resign because of the failure to ensure that that was in place. The member for Cat Island initially made the assertion that the property was insured, so he had to retract on that when it realized that it wasn't. But really the major concern is that still in this day and age, this government talks about transparency, it talks about freedom of information. We cannot find out who have these contracts. We requested as a part of the PAC committee, we requested the production of all the contracts and information relating to the BAMSI buildings. At this point, this is from April of last year. All that we have received is the contract for the male dormitory that was destroyed. And that was only as a result of the destruction. If that hadn't occurred, I'm sure we would have nothing. So here we are with these other buildings going up, and the minister acknowledged that none of them went out to bid. And then seems to want to suggest to us to the country that we were satisfied with contracts, so you should be satisfied. Yeah. Well, I don't know in what world they're living in.
So the point is that while you think BAMSI is a good idea, the execution of those contracts was very improper.
Yes, and that is a situation that is the way business is conducted in the country for whatever level. This latest one, and now I don't know if you watch Parliament on Wednesday, but Mr. Davis, Philip Davis, the member for Michael, indicated that they've now demolished the building. Now this is a year ago.
Yes.
1 year it's taken them to demolish the building. Initially they were saying that the building was capable of being restored. So anyway, they've now accepted it needs to be demolished. We've not yet had any information with regard to what monies were spent, what monies were given to the contractor, even though he shouldn't have had one red cent because he didn't provide insurance. We've had this statement that he will reimburse, the contractor, or Lihana will reimburse the government or the country. And as far as I'm aware, not one red cent has been received, and I don't know, not many men can produce $2.5 or whatever $1 million out of thin air. We don't know what monies were given to them. The building was not completed. That's not to say he wasn't paid all the money, because they haven't told us.
That you don't know.
I don't know, but I mean that we should have to scramble around as a nation, still having to scramble around and pressuring government to provide information which should be available without a second thought. That information should be forthcoming. We've had no information from Mr. Davis. He said that 9 of the bits of information we had requested were in his ministry. We've received nothing. The other 4 were in Minister Gray's portfolio. None of that has been forthcoming. So this kind of issue really concerns all of us, because whatever benefit one may ultimately receive from BAMSI in terms of the food that is going to ultimately be provided, it unfortunately is affected by the haphazard way in which the government has addressed the construction issue.
Of the place, yes.
And you know, the other thing is, and I've made issue of this several times, we can't even find out who has a contract to clean a little park in the Montague constituency. The people don't do the work. You go there and month after month, nothing happens, and then all of a sudden they'll come and they'll clean it up. But surely somebody has a contract, they're paid for it. We've insisted on them giving the contract to some of the local residents there, who would have much greater interest in ensuring that the property is maintained.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the fiscal affairs of the country, Mr. Lightbourne. The government puts out that there is a great improvement in deficit reduction in the country. I heard the Minister of State for Finance said that at the end of the fiscal year that the deficit will be reduced to about $70 million. That is good going on the part of the government, wouldn't you say? That they have been able, through VAT and other revenue measures, to reduce the deficit as drastically as that?
If that is the case, then that is little comfort to us. That is true.
Little comfort.
Well, it is little.
But if you move from $400+ million in deficit to 70 million, that is extremely good, isn't it?
Well, I'm not sure where the deficit figures come from, because every day you look, we're borrowing more money from, so, you know, in the last 2 weeks we borrowed $20 million to assist with the crime issues. We borrowed $33 million.
Yeah, but one has nothing to do with the next. I mean, if you,
well, they have something to do with debt.
If you're reducing your deficit by your revenue, your income, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't borrow, that you would not be borrowing.
Yeah, but then your debt continues to grow.
No, you're reducing your deficit, which means that you do not have to borrow as much money to cover the deficit. Yes?
Mr. Jones, I don't profess to be a mathematician in terms of these financial matters, but we've got to the point where the financial state of the country is it's on a hair wire at the moment. We're talking the foreign agencies have got us to the point where we're one step away from being junk bonds.
But that happened because of Bahama.
Well,
we were downgraded, and we are in the state that we are in because of the Bahama situation, and that is what the international agencies have said.
Well, that has certainly contributed, but we don't, as I've suggested before, this government can't walk and chew gum at the same time. If they're addressing the issue with terms of VAT that they brought in, and they're now proceeding to collect a substantial amount of money from VAT. But again, they've gone and made the announcement that VAT was going to be used to reduce the debt, to put playing fields and all the islands. I mean, it just went on and on of what they're going to do with VAT, and obviously that hasn't happened, and people are they've increased people's expectations so much, and so no wonder the public is disappointed when they see that really the actual provision of these different things that were promised, it just hasn't happened.
But wasn't value-added tax, wasn't VAT absolutely necessary, Mr. Lightbourne? Because you had a business community who supported VAT. At the end of the day, the Chamber of Commerce worked with the government to really put in place VAT. And the FNM had foreshadowed that VAT would have been introduced if you had won. So wasn't VAT a good thing?
Well, certainly it was necessary to provide additional income for the economy. There's no doubt about that. Now, you know, they keep throwing around that the previous government was going to bring in VAT. Well, I suppose at this point it's not really an issue whether they were or not. I think the fact that we have it in there, the major concern is that there are a number of areas which certainly the FNM feel are issues which should be exempt from VAT. Things like your medical food items for you know the staple foods and things like that, which have made a major impact on the poorer people in the country.
Yes.
And those are quite serious.
Let's look very quickly at one major issue that is in the public domain right now, and that is national health insurance. You feel do you have any disagreement with the government introducing national health insurance at this time?
National health insurance is you know, it's really a necessity for any country. It can destroy any family, whatever your financial position is, with catastrophic medical problems. There's no doubt about that. So I don't think the issue is over whether or not this is something that should have been introduced. But at this point in time, it's like so many of the things that this government has done in the past. They talk big, but it's not going to be able to do what they're saying it's going to do. At this point, one is supposed to get excited because you're given a card. And the perception is that, oh boy, no more cookouts and whatnot to pay for whatever. Well, a cookout's not going to go and help you go and pay for some catastrophic medical problem. The catastrophic and medical problems are not things which are going to be covered for a long time under this proposal. And the concern is that this is just a ploy in terms of what people are being promised. They can't deliver it.
But isn't national health insurance intended in the initial stage to deal with primary care? And primary care is to seek to prevent catastrophic illnesses. Primary care is to ensure that people get care before these non-communicable diseases really get bad, before they need some care for renal failure, before they need some care for some heart condition. So the government says that they are focusing now on primary care. Isn't that something, in order to bring about universal health care, isn't that the right way to go, to focus on primary care?
Well, I don't know if that is much more than is provided at the moment. And the real problem is there's so little solid information about how this thing is going to progress, how it's going to be paid for, who's going to pay for it. And I've heard several people connected with the government talk about, oh, money isn't the issue here. Well, you're trying to tell me money isn't the issue when you're going to be talking about a facility that's going to cost $200, $300, $400, $500, $600 million a year. And you want to tell me that money is not an issue? I realize that people's health and life is a very, very important thing, but the fact remains that any country can only afford so much.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, I don't know that we're in a position to afford what government is suggesting they're going to provide.
My final question to you, Mr. Lightbourne, is the government claims that it has an agenda. Mr. Christie says he has an agenda to bring about reform in the country. And he says that he has been doing some heavy lifting. He mentioned the fact that he has introduced VAT, he's regulated gaming in the country, he's introducing national health insurance, he's doing BAMSI to bring about food security in the country, and he's now looking at the Port Authority, and the recommendation is that the government would have equity in the port, the recommendation is that the government will sit to the table of the port, all of these things. Given all of that he has said, obviously you are not impressed, but what grade do you give the government of the Bahamas over the last 3.5, going on 4 years?
We would have to say it's a big old F.
F.
There is so much that you talk of addressing these heavy issues. Well, to start off with, when you make a claim that you're going to have a referendum determine whether or not we're going to have gaming in the country, this is the heavy lifting that you start off with. Then you kick the people in the backside and you say, I don't care what you said, we're not going to do what you told us to do. You start off from a position that really you offend the intelligence of our country. You talked about having a referendum on petroleum drilling. Now there's little words sneaking out that really the sip they get on the ground is people don't want a referendum for it, that they already decided they want it. Well, when you can't accept the government at its word, then you have serious problems. And this is, I think they throw out a lot of issues, a lot of promises. We're going to provide 10,000 jobs. We're going to take care of crime, solve the economy, restore the fiscal security. And it doesn't happen. It then becomes a real concern for your people. I'm sure you saw the statement that was issued by the Auditor General about property taxes. I mean, we've been discussing this issue for years and years, the extent of the outstanding property taxes. Rather than going down, it's now gone up another 100 million in a year. Government gave all sorts of giveaways to, if you pay now, we let you off all the other taxes you owed. There were endless concessions which they gave. And notwithstanding all of that, we're still back to the point where we're now over 600 million that are owed. I mean, that is no drop in the bucket. Government has to address it. And the fact that it was there before doesn't, as often happens, the government turns around and thinks, oh, well, it was that way when you were here. Well, this is a problem in this country. We allow things to continue 5 years in a row like nothing happens. There's so many things that are still out there. We're still at the point that we were when they came into office 4 years ago.
And let me ask you, and I said it was the final question. I saw where the real property tax is, what, $600+ million.
Right.
How can people pay real property tax in a bad economy when they're not working? How do you get a citizenry, a community, in an economy that has really not properly recovered from 2008 recession to pay real property tax? Tell me, how do you do that?
This is, well, if that is difficult in the same way that it's, you can understand then why people are still owing money on houses, they're losing their homes.
Right.
It's all part of the same problem.
Right. So if a person has a house that is valued at $500,000 and they're losing the house, how can they pay real property tax? The government says that it's going to assist with some mortgage relief plan, and that has not materialized. But tell me, how is the real property tax going to be paid, Mr. Lightbourne?
Look, how are you going to buy your groceries when I stick a VAT on top of it? You know, all of these things affect everything you do.
Well, it's good. It's good to talk with you, and I keep saying that I would like to talk with opposition politicians very often, because I believe that the country is well served when they hear the other point of view, and the government has been dominating media for, especially talk shows in some cases, and it will be good to hear more opposition voices. So I thank you so very much for being here.
I thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for watching and listening to our program today with Mr. Richard Lightbourne, the MP for Montague. Good evening, everyone.